Hello and welcome to IR Thinker, where international affairs are discussed. I'm Martin Zubko. By all accounts, we are hearing more and more about India's international role. On this edition of IR Thinker, I'm curious about India's position in BRICS, what BRICS has brought to India, and what India has given to BRICS. Also, what are the future plans? Even though there is a remaining skepticism about BRICS, we can't ignore that the bloc represents 27% of the world's land surface and 41% of the population. Today, I'm joined by Professor Junuguru Srinivas, assistant professor at the Woxsen University in Kamkole, which is around 50 kilometers from Hyderabad in India. He is also Alina Mungiu Pippidi Professor of Public Policy and co-chair of the COE Public Policy Research. Professor was awarded many awards worldwide, has participated in many international conferences, and published intensively for the academic journals. His focus is on foreign policy of India, China, and Russia, political economy of the global south. But there is one detail in his CV that got my attention. And this detail is, Professor has published two books. First one, Future of BRICS and the Role of Russia and China, published in 2022. And the second one, Russian Approach Towards BRICS and G20, 2001 and 2012, published in 2017. Therefore, I assume that Professor is the right person to speak about BRICS and India. Professor Srinivas, welcome to the show. And the first question before we go a bit deeper into the conversation, how you come across BRICS?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. It's my honor to be part of this lecture series. I feel immense pleasure to be part of this lecture again. So, I started developing interest towards BRICS group from 2009 onwards, because that time I was in Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. I was pursuing my master's, right? So that time there was a lot of literature was going on international relations, because the fundamental reason is the political shape of BRICS was took place in 2009, though the BRICS was formed in, shaped or coined by a scholar, Jim O'Neill, and at that time it was only mentioned BRIC only, not BRICS, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. So the scholar suggested all the Western countries that these are the four countries which are having immense natural, human, technological resources in upcoming international global economy. Hence, the Western world should shift their foreign policy towards these countries. That's how the Jim O'Neill suggested to the Western countries to shift their foreign policy towards Western countries. So that was how in 2001 the BRIC coin was coined by that scholar. So that was a period where the economic development was happening in these global south countries. So after seeing this sort of a rapid evolution of these 4-5 global south countries in international relations, the then president of Russia, right? So he mobilized his foreign policy approaches to approach these BRICS countries to, give a formal shape of big group, right? So that's how there were frequent meetings. I'll talk about this one probably a little later. So that's how the BRICS formal establishment in the form of political entity was took place in 2009, and the first meeting was happening in Ekaterinburg, Russia, in 2009. So that time I was doing a master's, like I said, in JNU. So literature was available. So that's how I got interest towards these BRIC groups. And also, who can ignore these BRICS countries' resources? Like they have 40% of the global population, 30% of the global geography, and 24% of the global GDP, nearly 17% of the global trade, and humongous amount of global forex exchange that these BRIC countries have. So if all these countries together having this many resources, naturally they will have a sway. Right, and that is what happening in present global politics, right? And also, if you could go little deeper and deeper regarding India and China's history, even Lenin also wrote in his memoir that the future of global politics belongs to India, China, and Russia.
Understood.
Right?
So that's a good story also for our students who are studying now, and there are some international developments and they are interested in, so that in the future they might be experts like you, because that was quite good coincidence that BRICS was developing and your studies were developing. Thank you very much for this. That very interesting answer. So let's start a bit deeply into BRICS and India. So we have a first question, and let's start from the beginning. When BRICS was formed, under what sort of circumstances India joined the BRICS?
So it is a long history, Dr. Martin, because after the disintegration of Soviet Union in 1991, the world was actually divided into several sections, because US became the single largest global power and started dominating global political, economic, social, cultural affairs, including security domain. Right. The same time, Russia's power got declined. Right, and other countries, particularly the Western European countries, be it UK, France, Germany, or other countries, and also Japan, power have been again gone down, and then they became voiceless, unlike aggressive voice that these America was having. Right, and for example, scholar Quanxing Zhou, he termed that after the disintegration of Soviet Union, there was a complete establishment of unipolar world order in international relation, and the bipolar world got ended with this instant. Right, and countries like in Japan, Russia, or maybe Western countries, power got minimalized, and they did not have enough influence in global affairs. Right, so this phenomenon in world politics was some scholar like Huntington, he termed this one as the paradoxical multipolar world order. Means there will be a single largest global power under which there will be minimal powers, maybe in terms of Japan, UK, France, and Germany. So that's how the US actually established a system in which it could maintain, defend, and expand its liberal economic order, so that it could serve its national economic and securities policies in international relation. Later, it also provided that global political dynamics started changing for many regions, because that time only the nascent rise of global south countries started evolving in the form of Brazil, maybe China, or maybe India, or Indonesia, or several other countries. Right, their economic voice is actually slowly increasing, and they also started surfacing their concerns of global affairs in international relation. So like that, it's the nascent rise of a global south countries were evolving. And likewise in 2009, when there was a non-aligned movement meeting took place, the then foreign minister of China, Yang Jiechi, he said that there is a rise of global south multilateralism in international relation, hence these countries should be given prioritized in policy making and decision making of global fora. Right, so likewise later a sudden shift took place in Russian foreign policy as well, because of in 1996, Russia changed its foreign minister, Primakov, and Primakov became a foreign minister of Russia. And Primakov started shifting Russia's foreign policy towards global south countries, and he started giving importance to India, China, Brazil, and other countries, because, as I said, Russia's power got declined right after 1991 incident, and they needed countries which could balance in international relation and which could expand Russia's power. So that's how the sudden shift of Russia's foreign policy towards the global south took place. And also Russia included a multipolarity concept in its foreign policy in 2000. Right, so that's how it basically trying to establish its own bloc, so that which could balance its power in international relation and also reduce the Western countries' hegemony in global power politics. Right, so it is the same phase. Russia, India, Brazil, and other global south countries also are thinking that there is a complete unipolar world order which not giving a face or a voice for the global south countries, right? So they also needed a club which could expand their voice. Like that it was happening. And India, for example, if you talk about that time, India objected or abstained from UN resolution 88%. Whenever the US introduced resolution in United Nations General Assembly, that means 80% of the resolution which was imposed or introduced by the America was objected by India, means not accepted, rejected. That shows how these countries were dejected with the established global politics and institutional structure. Likewise, Brazil also was thinking same way, and China, their embassy was attacked in some of the Western countries. They also got dejected with the unipolar world politics, because it is not at all giving space for their countries to expand their voice in international relation. So it is the same phase. Russia thought that they need a voice to expand their foreign policy. That's how Putin, when he attended UN General Assembly meeting in 2006 at New York, he approached these India, Brazil, and China's foreign ministers to formal establishment of BRIC group. Right, so that is the first ever major movement that took place in BRICS history in 2006 in New York, when the foreign ministers of BRICS group met. Right, after that, when there was that was the moment, that's how the first ever foreign or external affairs minister of these countries met there and started discussing about global politics and global economic order. And after that, they have met again in Japan, Hokkaido. Then the G20 summit, they also furthered their discussion on BRICS group. Right, so that's how the shaping of BRICS group was happening. And then during the same phase, we had hit by global financial recession in 2008, which means these global financial institutions are not fulfilling the needs of global south countries. Right, so all these things actually combined together played a significant role for these countries to be a part of this BRICS group. And also during the same time, Asian financial crisis took place, so it was a complete disturbance in existing global order, which was not at all fulfilling the needs of global south countries. So that's how India became a part and parcel of BRICS group, so that it could expect maintaining a stable economic international order, and also it could give some space for developing its own GDP, and also which could provide some employment opportunities for growing India's youth, and also which could give some investment for poverty alleviation program in India, and also which could actually serve as an alternative global mechanism for promoting economic and social growth of India, because that was the time India is growing, right? So particularly at a time when global institutions are under tremendous stress in the form of financial recession, right? And India hopes to use this BRICS group to expand its foreign policy towards Africa, which was hitherto ignored, and also it wanted to expand its foreign policy towards Latin America. Again, it was hitherto ignored. So it basically combination of several factors which played a significant role for India to be part of BRICS groups.
Right, but that was excellent explanation. Thank you for this. And during the negotiations, there was a figure of Manmohan Singh. Can you please tell us about this person, because he was the Prime Minister of India, negotiating and representing India in the negotiation? What was the perception of his personality in the world internationally and inside of India internally?
Yes, he is a visionary leader of India, right? In fact, it is not only the BRICS. In fact, he was the torch bearer of India's economic reforms in 1991 during PV Narasimha Rao Prime Minister tenure. Right? That was the time when India was under deep economic crisis. In fact, under his guidelines only, India brought LPG program into India's economy and integrated India's economy with the global economy. That's how the reforms took place, and that's how the rapid rise or development of India economy took place. So he is played a significant role for India's foreign policy towards BRIC. And when the BRICS was shaped, he was the Prime Minister of India, right? When there was actually a lot of ifs and buts when he wanted to India to be part of BRICS, right? For example, in 2009, when he wanted to sign a nuclear treaty with America, he was the one. He only single-handedly handled this issue, because within his own political party, there was lack of support for him. Likewise, when he wanted to establish relations with BRIC countries, same thing happened. So it was a courageous step that Dr. Manmohan Singh took to make India to be a part of this BRICS group, so that India's economy can be developed and the growing youth of India will get benefited, and the stature of India's economy can be expanded in international economic structure. And in fact, he was the person who actually pushed for new development bank. Though the new development bank, which was formally established in 2014, but the seeds of establishment of this BRICS bank took place in 2012 in New Delhi's 4th BRICS summit. Right. So in that meeting, actually, Dr. Manmohan Singh suggested all the BRICS countries that let's establish a bank or institution or economic institution which could help for our region to develop. Right. So that's how he proposed this idea. Fortunately, other members of BRICS, maybe Russia or Brazil or China, accepted to a formal establishment of BRICS Development Bank. So New Delhi, and then Durban, and then in 2014, the formal Fortaleza BRICS Summit played a significant role for the establishment of New Development Bank. And also, he also accepted for the inclusion of South Africa in the BRICS group. South Africa was not at all part of BRICS in 2009. It was made as a BRIC member in 2011 when third BRICS summit took place in Sanya, China. So he's actually played a significant role for the success of BRICS Development Bank, and for the convincing of all the BRICS member for the inclusion of other South Africa, right? And that you can see the fruits of a BRICS Development Bank, which is playing a significant role in current economic institutional structure, particularly in the global south region.
Right. And can you please tell me why he wanted South Africa? Why this country? Is there any link between South Africa and India?
BRICS is a intercontinental team. One is from Latin America, two are from Asia, and Russia is Eurasian, right? So there is a depth of equal representation of all regions,
I see. So he wanted a
right?
country from Africa to be
Yeah,
included.
he wanted a country from Africa which could actually play significant role for all this country to go into African region, so that their region also will get developed. At the same time, these countries also get benefited, because as Africa is the area which is having humongous amount of natural resources, but unfortunately underdeveloped.
I see. I understand. Thank you. Thank you for this explanation. Now, after Dr. Manmohan Singh, the office was taken by Narendra Modi. And can we say a few words about Modi's understanding of BRICS? Is there any difference, or Modi is basically continuing in the legacy of Dr. Manmohan Singh?
To my understanding, I don't think that there is that much difference between Dr. Manmohan Singh foreign policy and present Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, because both the Prime Minister have given equal importance to the BRICS group, because the kind of activities that these two Prime Ministers did for the success of BRICS group is clearly indicating it. But the leadership style is different,
Okay.
because Manmohan Singh leadership style is different, and policy making and policy implementation is different, whereas Narendra Modi's policy making and policy implementation is different. In fact, the current Prime Minister of India is very aggressive in the policy framing and policy implementation. So when Manmohan Singh was acting as a Prime Minister of India, BRICS group was primarily economic and trade bloc. It was mostly talking about economy, trade, climate. Okay, so these set of activities that they are trying to give importance for the BRICS growth. But then, like when Narendra Modi became Prime Minister of India, he realized that there is a lot of scope of BRICS apart from economic and trade relation. It has a lot of importance in political affairs of international relation, right? So that is the way he actually wanted a strategic importance of BRICS in international relations. That's how the security, climate change, maybe drugs, narcotics, or terrorism, extremism. So these issues also should be discussed by the BRICS group, because these are the countries, be it Russia, be it China, India, Brazil. All these countries are facing this terrorism, right? So why not these countries should discuss the security issues, strategic issues, so that all these countries can together collectively eradicate global terrorism from their region, right? So that's how he started giving importance to security strategic affairs of BRICS, and he actually somehow convinced other BRICS member to recognize some of the anti state actors to be as international terrorist organization, particularly from Africa. When there was a BRICS summit which took place in 2016 in Goa, India wanted to recognize some of the anti state actors from Pakistan should be declared as international terrorist organization. But for that, Russia and China politely rejected it. But somehow, because of the shrewdness of Narendra Modi, he could, or his diplomatic approaches could convince Chinese policy framers as well as Russia's policy framers to declare them as international terrorist organizations, right? So that's how the securitization of BRICS probably started under his tenure.
Can we sum up, like, during the Singh and during the Modi, many things happened in relations to BRICS. And when we have like a very thick line, and we basically will sum up like what the BRICS brought to India so far. Because you said it's financial aspect as a bank, then you mentioned the security aspect. So we have finance, we have security. Can you elaborate a bit more what the BRICS brought to India?
Definitely, Dr. Martin. Yes, BRICS got a lot of benefits to India, though it is actually less explored area. Many people or many scholars or intellectuals talk about the future of the BRICS, but they ignore what and all it has done to India.
Okay.
Right? For example, like I said, the BRICS group established NDB, that is the New Development Bank, which actually funding a huge amount of in huge amount in Indian economy, particularly in green technology. In fact, India is one of the largest, benefiter of BRICS Development Bank, right? And this bank actually playing a significant role for other BRICS member to get benefited from the fund it has got with the contribution of all these BRICS members. And also India's IMF quota got increased, like in some years back it was actually a 2.44 only, but India's IMF quota increased to 2.75, right? And again, there is a meeting of IMF member to recalculate that how much quota should be distributed to all the countries, and that is happening in this year in December. And India's finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman affirming that India should be given more quota so that it will get more benefit. In fact, it deserves,
Yes.
right? So that is what it is demanding for reform of this IMF, which could actually help for India's financial system. It did actually, like I said, 2.44 to 2.75 means improvement, right? And then the BRICS group actually played a significant role for India to represent global South voice in international relations. Right, so it is actually leading or taking a lead position to surface global South voice in international relation, in which BRICS is playing a significant platform. Right, so for this also, like India got a space or a platform which could represent global South countries interested in international fora. Right, and also it can also affirmatively put forward its demand for existing institutional structure of international relations reform. Maybe a IMF, maybe a World Bank, maybe a WTO, maybe a UNSC, right? So with the BRICS group, it could actually expand its voice for the reform of existing global institutional structure, and which is playing in the form of Russia, maybe Brazil. Of course, we have a differences with China, but at least it is saying that there should be a proper representation of all countries in the global fora. That's what China is trying to highlight. At the same time, which has the BRICS group has given India a direct nexus with African countries as well as Latin American countries, right? Because Latin American country is there, right? And in the form of Brazil, and Africa, South Africa is there. So that also gave some space for India to penetrate in those area, so that India's foreign policy can be benefited. At the same time, finally, under this question, India's image also got increased, and it is true, right? Because it has clearly reflected in Ukraine crisis. You've seen that how many leaders asked Prime Minister of India to please convince Vladimir Putin to stop, attacking Ukraine. That is a clear indication, right? So that's how I'm sure India will benefit more from this breakthrough. Of course, there are challenges that we'll discuss probably in later part of our discussion, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you touch the foreign policy, what I want to ask is, for instance, India has a security policy or security foreign policy. It has internal regulations and internal thoughts. And then you have the BRICS. So how does it work, for instance, when India is developing its foreign policies or other policies? How much is the influence of BRICS on this decision-making process?
Lot of things are happening actually because of this grid. In fact, it is a combination of both combination of both things are happening when India's foreign policy is framing and shaping. Because India is in such a situation or location where in its western side we have Pakistan. We have always issues with Pakistan, like we believe that Pakistan is always tinkering with India's domestic affairs, which creating problem particularly in Jammu and Kashmir. And if you go to northeastern region, we have China, right? So that is also we have adversarial relations, though it is the largest a trading partner of India. But then we have like conflictual relations between India and China, and creating problem particularly in northeastern area because of border issues that are taking place between India and China. So these are the adversary countries that are locating in India's western and eastern sides. At the same time, we have good neighborly countries in the form of Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, or Sri Lanka, right? So it is not one that single issue that plays a significant role, rather a combination of several things which plays a paramount role for India's foreign policy framing and implementation. Like I said, yeah, so, but then we should know that the foreign policy is of any country is determined by domestic factors as well as internal factors, right? But for India, we have like geographical issues, like I said, western side, Pakistan, eastern side, China, right? And also historical reason, conflictual historical region that are happening between like India and Pakistan, India and Nepal, India and Bangladesh. The historical regions also play significant role. Though Bangladesh and Pakistan and India have same history, but then we have to have a different foreign policy objective when we deal with Pakistan and when we deal with Bangladesh, because we have a checkered history with these countries, right? Like with economy. So we have like when we got independency, India was under tremendous stress, massive unemployment. There was not proper GDP growth. Okay, there was no modern technology, no modern industries, right? So that's why apart from this one, India is actually like located around Indian Ocean region. It is also strategic aspect of India's foreign policy. So multiple, what to say, elements play a role for the India's foreign policy making and implementation. And that too, India is aiming to become one of the largest global economy, and we're aiming that by 2047, India should be made as developed countries, right? So
Understood.
in which we have to have like like in a strategic neutrality,
Right.
means we need all countries support and help, and also India also can shoulder whenever other countries face any issue, and that is what happening, right?
Yes.
So that is the way multiple things play significant role and important role for India's foreign policy framing and implementation due to its geographical location, history, political culture, economic factors, and several other.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. And one more question. Let's touch a bit of India's diplomacy. Because from what you told us already, we basically have an impression that there was India's diplomacy before BRICS and after BRICS. And BRICS has a significant influence or impact on that diplomacy. Can you tell us what is India's DNA of diplomacy? Can we describe India's diplomacy? What does it mean nowadays?
The new answer of India's DNA diplomacy is peace, stability, tranquility of international order so that all countries grow together. But then, whenever India's foreign policy literature you take up, most of the time, India's foreign policy was explained from the Western perspective. Most of the time, India's foreign policy was contextualized from Western voice. But the Western countries' foreign policy is, the discourse basically focus upon Eurocentric area or Eurocentric foreign policy means their theories primarily explains the foreign policy of countries from their perspective, Eurocentric perspective. But we should keep it in mind that every country has its own history. Every country has its own perspective. Every country has its own objective. Every country has its own reasons to participate in international relations. Right? So there should be diversification of a foreign policy exploration in international relation. We should actually start studying global south foreign policy, in which also we should actually emphasize country specific foreign policy. For example, within this global south, India has its own set of foreign policy goals and objective to be a member of international order. Likewise, China also has its own perspective and approach to be a member of international order. So there should be diversification of theories of international relation. Particularly, it should actually reflect the marginal voice of international relations, because hitherto the marginal voice have been never explored, never prioritized. Right? So that should be prioritized in this discourse of international relation. And that too, India has its own contemporary foreign policy objective, and also different set of relation, institutional setting due to its divergence of Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and also Indian Ocean location. Right? So all these factors and political elements, trade play a significant role for India's foreign policy to explore, framing and implementation. And we should actually deconstruct the Eurocentric foreign policy and start digging deeper and deeper, and we should diversify it, and country specific foreign policy should be developed. In fact, that was happening from 1991, but then it was actually globalization, feminist perspective, constructive perspective, Marxist perspective, but within which we need to focus upon country specific.
Right. I basically spent more than 10 years around diplomats. And every time I spoke with diplomats, they very highly, evaluating the Indian diplomats. They said they are one of the most underestimated diplomats in the world because there are not many books or literature. But I think, as you said, as you pointed out, that India's diplomacy might have much better momentum, which is coming, I think. And I think there is a very important role of India's diaspora abroad, because I think India is highly populated internally, but you have also a huge population abroad, outside of India. Can we elaborate a little bit, Dr. Srinivas, about or on this aspect? Like, what is the role of the India's diaspora abroad and the India's foreign policy / diplomacy?
Definitely, Martin. So, in recent past, in fact, 1-2 months back, the UN on World Population Day released a report of global population trend, in which it says that India is going to become the largest populous country in the world in 2023.
Which is this year?
This year. That means huge amount of population, that is more than 1.4 billion population are going to live in our country, exceeding China, right? In fact, in 2019 only, the World Bank, in its world population prospect, declared that India's population is equal to 90% of the global, 19% of the global population, and China's population is equal to 18% of the global population, right? So lot many people are actually living in this area. But the big question is, there is a lot of responsibility on the policymakers of these countries, right? Because are we in a position to provide affordable water, house, cloth, health facility, and other basic amenities, right? So it is actually a big question if you think deeper under the consideration of present scenario. Lot of ifs and buts are happening, right? So in this scenario, the Indian diaspora play a significant role for India's developmental journey. 2023, in fact, yesterday and today, India is celebrating 17th Pravas Bharatiya Divas at Indore, which is located in Madhya Pradesh. It is the cleanest city of India, right? So this year, India is celebrating 17th Pravas Bharatiya Divas, and which is named as diaspora, semicolon, reliable partners for India's progress in the Amrit Kal. Amrit Kal means the next 25 years of India's history, right? So this will be a golden period of India's history, because it is predicting that by 2047 India is going to be the developed country in the world. Okay, and also India is aiming to reach US $30 trillion, which is like in current scenario, which is equal to US and China. And that's so it actually aiming to become the third largest global economy after China, America, right? That means like lot of ambition, like big ambition that this country is having. And also India recently became the fifth largest global economy, surpassing the UK, right? And that too, it had happened in COVID times. That too, like the Ukraine crisis time. That means it has a potential. That means there's a potential. Why? Because due to Ukraine crisis and COVID-19 hit, entire globe got distracted, particularly economy. Despite these conditions also, India could manage to surpass UK and became the fifth largest global economy. That means it has potential, right? And also India is the only country which is having like a humongous amount of like diaspora consisting of 32 millions spread across 32 millions spread across Africa, UK, Canada, France, Germany, Asia, and whatnot, right? And so India's diaspora is more active, proactive, and successful in helping India's developmental steps. Okay, so over the last several years, Indians have moved from their country to other countries, particularly the skilled labor, UK, Singapore, or US. and getting high paid jobs. Right.
Right.
So when they get high paid jobs, obviously they'll send their money to their countries. It maybe to their parents, or maybe other neighbors, or maybe friends of people those are actually living in that countries, right? So it is estimated that in 2021, World Bank said this data. So the Indian diaspora has sent 89.4 US billion dollars to India,
Okay.
right? And in 2022, the data is yet to out. It is going to surpass US $100 billion, which is equal to 3% of India's GDP.
That's significant.
That's significant. Just imagine if all the resources could tap, how best that India could benefit and how India can be developed, right? So the best thing that India could do in this situation is that India should have a political will, convince India's diaspora to send more remittances to India and be part of India's developmental steps, right? That too, like India's diaspora occupied in a very important position, be it Microsoft, Apple, or some even countries are headed by India's. The recent example is UK. Rishi Sunak, he's from India. His ancestors are from India, right? So there is a lot of role that Indian diaspora has, provided we need political will to tap the resources of Indian diaspora. As I said, 3% of GDP means, which is huge.
Yeah, and I would also add a little bit that I live in many countries, and in each country there is a very good reputation of India's people abroad. Like they always have businesses, they always can manage the things, So I think this helps a lot to India because of that reputation of Indian people, like students abroad from India. By the way, is there any misconception about India's foreign policy / diplomacy? Something we think, but in reality is not true. Okay, is there anything like that?
Difficult question, but a good question, because I'll bring recent examples only, particularly Ukraine crisis. See, when all Western countries were under tremendous stress due to Putin's aggressive steps towards Ukraine, right? So India took neutral stand. India needed this one because for them, it is not only the Western countries or Russia which are important, rather all countries are important, right? But then what Western media projected India that it is a pro-Russia. Of course, its abstinence in UN resolution reflected that one, but then it is not like that. India has its own relation or different relation with Russia. The same time, the Western countries both are equal actors of India's foreign policy, and both will play significant role for India's foreign policy making and implementation. So the Western countries should not believe or think that Indian foreign policy is pro-Russia. Rather, it is an independent sovereign country which will have its own foreign policy, which could meet its interest and promote global stability, peace, tranquility, which India is aiming for that.
Right. That's a good explanation because I think many people here in the West they put India in like a Russian basket with China, like sort of like you're buying the Russian oil, so you must be supporting the war and you must be supplying weapons and everything. So that's a good clarification for us to know how is the real position of India. Let's speak a little bit about particular countries in the BRICS and the position of India towards those countries. So we can say a few challenges and a few advantages of those countries for India. Let's start with Brazil. Let's continue with Russia, China, and South Africa. So we have the whole spectrum of the BRICS countries. So, for instance, if there is Brazil, what is positive for India towards Brazil? And maybe there are some challenges or maybe issues that you would like to solve and improve the situation for the future. So, can you please elaborate on that, Dr. Srinivas? Thank you.
Definitely. It's a big question because we have to discuss, 4 countries, and that too we
Yes.
have to
But you are also a big expert, so therefore a big question.
I'll try my little best to
Thank
answer
you.
this question. So when it comes to Brazil, no, I'll highlight 3 advantages that India and Brazil has. Particularly, see, both India and Brazil have extensive, bilateral and multilateral relations, because India and Brazil are members of basic, BRICS, G20, right? So that means, which actually, apart from having a bilateral relation, which have multilateral relations, which actually giving space for both these countries to share their, developmental report or, progress, right? And also, Brazil is second one. Brazil is one of the most, important trading partners of India in Latin America, right? It is the largest, country in Latin America, particularly in terms of geography, which also has an immense amount of resources, right? So that actually plays significant role for India's and Brazil's to grow together and get mutual benefit, right? And also the third important point that highlights that India became the 5th largest, trading partner of Brazil in 2021, right? So the bilateral trade actually chain exceeded, more than 11 US billion dollars in 2021, which is 63% is more than in 2020. Means there is a potential. It's just that we need to expand it, right? So these are the 3 advantages that India and Brazil has in their bilateral and multilateral relation. However, there are some disadvantages as well, which actually both the countries are unknowingly or ignoring, because for example, one, when he became head of Brazil, his foreign policy approach towards BRICS was something different, right? Bolsonaro was not giving that much importance to the BRICS group, whereas India, under the Prime Minister of Narendra Modi, he was actually aggressively pushing for BRICS, right? So there should not be any misconception and misunderstanding. That too, when they actually dealing with the US, he was actually aggressively, Bolsonaro aggressively tilting his foreign policy towards America, whereas India is not that aggressive. Rather, it is actually giving importance only. So that misconception that actually we should resolve. And then other important disadvantage is that India and Brazil signed, defense cooperation agreement in 2003, but then there was not that much progress, right? So in 2016, there was some discussion and some development actually took place, but that is not going in a fruitful way. So both the countries, I feel there is a lot of potential for defense approaches, cooperation and mutual benefit that these countries should focus, which unfortunately are not giving importance. And the third disadvantage is both the countries have bio, sector, bioenergy sector offers a large benefits, right? Because Brazil has its own bioenergy resources. India also does, right? But then they're not actively cooperating on this area, as we're talking about climate change and global warming. So probably we can shift our foreign policy and cooperation into bioenergy sector cooperation, so that both the countries will get benefited. Okay. Right? So these are the 3 advantages and disadvantages that Brazil and India has. So let me come to Russia now. So the first important point is Russia is the largest defense apparatus exporter of India. In fact, more than 50% of defense apparatus is coming from Russia, right? So that means a lot of importance that these both countries have, right? And in 2022, Russia became a seventh largest global trading partner of India, right? Okay, so these are the two important points that it highlights. And also the second point, historical partners. See, since the beginning of India's independence, the USSR, or the Russia's previous form, continuously supporting for India's growth in international relations. It has funded a lot of financial resources for India's economic development, be it our IITs, be it our public sector companies. In fact, India's planning is actually inspired from USSR. Okay, at one point of time, the USSR was the largest global trading partner of India, right? So when there is a war between India and China, USSR supported India and took a step which could benefit India, right? So that much importance that these two countries have, right? And then the India, for India's aim to be a global actor of international relation, Russia is also supporting for UNSC membership. Third point, right? So Russia is the only country which actually positioning itself to support India's UNSC membership anywhere, any fora, any platform. No other country doing that. That means clearly signaling that it is pro to India's UNSC membership. So these are the three advantages that India has. But then again, there are some disadvantages as well, because due to Russia's relations with China, and also growing importance of Pakistan in Russia's foreign policy, signaling some uncomfortable in India's foreign policy circle, because both have different relations with India, right? So that is how Russia's importance towards China and Pakistan causing concern for India's foreign policy, and sometimes thinking twice to move ahead with Russia, right? And other problem with Russia that India has is that sometimes they are actually delivered inferior quality different defense approaches, right? So deadlines are shorter. So to meet the deadlines, okay, so sometimes maybe could be a different reason, but then India is getting inferior quality goods, which are actually sometimes causing problem for India's policy framers. And also, both countries have been saying that they should increase their bilateral trade, by 2025 to $30 billion. But current scenario says that only $18,000 million trade took place in 2022, in which Russia's exports to India consisting of $16,000 million, which means India could able to export only some nearly $1,000 million, which is lot of trade deficit.
I see. I understand.
Right?
Yeah.
So that should be taken care of when there is a trade discussion that is happening between India and Russia, right? So these are the three issues that are actually cropping up between Russia and India, right? So, and then let me come to China. Some of the advantage that India has with China's collaboration is basically largest trading partners. In fact, 40% of India's trade is with China happening.
Okay.
India's trade is actually international trade. 40% of India's international trade is happening between India and China.
That's a significant number.
That's significant, right? That too, like every year, more than 100, US billion dollars trade is happening, right? So this is the positive, a signal that these both countries are giving for a mutual cooperation and also develop in global economy. And also the second advantage is that both India and China has equal ambition to play significant role in international relations. India has its own perspective and policy to play a significant role or become important actor of international relations. Likewise, China also has the same. So if both countries together come, then things would be different. But unfortunately, it is not happening. That is different issue again. The point here is that both countries have equal ambition to play a significant role, which is important thing that we should take in care of. And then, most of the time we always read or see that India and China has adversary relations, but when it comes to international relations now, India and China are actually cooperating, particularly in global fora, be it in reforming global organization, right? That was the objective of BRICS, and both countries are be part of BRICS, right? So clearly signaling that both have equal, aim, right? And also when it comes to climate change, both countries try to put forward their common perspective, right? Likewise, if you see AIB, Asian Infrastructural Bank, China is the largest contributor of AIB, but after China, India is the largest global partner of AIB. Though this bank is consisting from Western countries as well, but then India is the second largest partner of AIB. That means if India has negative approach towards China's growth, it doesn't do that, right? So it is a positive thing, a positive signal that India is giving to China that our issues are not all or comprehensive issues, rather specific issue based on the issue that we should discuss, rather than complete sidelining of India or China on including every issue, right? So the disadvantage is that these two countries have trade deficit, right? Like I said, every year more than 100 US billion dollars trade takes place between China and India. Unfortunately, in 2020, 70+% of the trade deficit is there between India and China. 73% implies China is exporting more, India is exporting less. The trade deficit that was there was 73% in 2020. Okay, somehow it got reduced to 51% in 2021.
Right. Okay.
So there is huge trade deficit that is there between India and China, that there is actually favoring China, which is causing a problem, right? So that problem actually creating a rift between India's and China's economic cooperation that we should take care of. That is the first disadvantage. And the second disadvantage is border dispute. It is a perennial. Every time both the countries are actually involved in border dispute. Sometimes China is tinkering with India in Galwan Valley from Ladakh, and sometimes from Sikkim, from sometimes Arunachal Pradesh. Some 2-3 days back only I could watch one video that Chinese military forces are entering in India, and India's military forces are obstructing them to enter in India. Obviously, these things cause rift between India and China, particularly the border dispute playing a major stumbling block for fruitful relations of India and China, right? And the third disadvantage that India and China has is mistrust
Okay.
due to these a trade deficit and border dispute and several tech companies of China. India is believing that they are stealing our data, they are actually disturbing our security, right? They're deliberately encouraging Pakistan to uh, uh, send their anti-social elements to India and disturbing is India's peace and stability, right? So these sort of disadvantages that these India and China has, that we should actually explore and so that both countries can grow together. Okay.
Okay.
And the last country is South Africa. So the advantages with South Africa that India has is both are historical partners, because Mahatma Gandhi, father of India, he stayed in South Africa for quite many years. He played a significant role for the development of South Africa, right? And Nelson Mandela, his iconic figure of South Africa, he also played a significant role for the fruitful relations of India and South Africa, right? So this history play a significant role for India's and South Africa's relations, right? And other positive thing that is between India and South Africa is, see, India's new education policy encouraging foreign universities to establish their branches in India, where the South Africa can send their kids to India so that they be get educated, they be get educated with less amount of money, right? So there will be a proper fruitful education, academic skill development collaboration, cooperation can take place between India and South Africa. And then South Africa also has largest in its diaspora due to historical reason, because during a British time, many of Indians have been shifted to South Africa to work in the tea plantation. So till today, many of India's diaspora are living there. They are playing a significant role for South African development. At the same time, this community can play a marvelous job for the prosperous relations between India and South Africa. But then there are some disadvantages as well. Particularly, their annual trade is only some US $10 billion only. Though there's a lot of potential, particularly in agriculture sector, energy sector, technology sector, mineral resources sector, right? So that these countries should actually tap. And then cultural ties should be strengthened more. If there is a, yes, Indian diaspora is huge in South Africa, but if we could tap them, both the countries can get benefited, right? So that actually we should promote and encourage for the both the communities to at least in cultural terms, in education terms, okay, in software terms, soft power terms, we should actually focus upon. But unfortunately, which is not happening. And then third disadvantage that, see, India is aiming to be a UNSC member. Likewise, the South Africa also aiming to be member of UNSC, or reforming of global fora. But then both the countries, unfortunately, not putting effective step for the reforming of UNSC,
Right.
right? So that they should work together. So these are the some advantages and disadvantages that these four countries have with India, and how can they resolve? That is basically depends on their hands.
That's correct. That was amazing explanation. Thanks for that. In the beginning of our talk, we sum up the advantages of BRICS for India. And then we spoke about India and particular countries, which is all good. But let's now speak about the BRICS as a bloc of countries, and what sort of threats do you see that can come to BRICS? geopolitical, financial, maybe culture. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, actually, there are a lot of issues that are there in the BRICS group. Yes, but then let me talk about positive things first, and then after that, I'll talk about negative or issues or a conflict that are there in the BRICS, right?
Okay.
So, first of all, I think we should appreciate the BRICS countries to be part of BRICS group, because all countries have different histories. Okay, and different political system. Okay, and all are from different continental regions, and then divergent policies, particularly foreign policies. But the mute point is, all countries have common agenda that the existing institutional structure of global order are not reflecting or representing all countries' interests, that we should reform, that all these countries that this have. So the point here is that though there are a lot of differences between the BRICS countries, but they are coming under same umbrella and voicing with one voice for the reforming of existing global order, right? So this is the positive word that I think we should appreciate, right? But then again, there are actually negative points that are there within the BRICS, which actually causing a rift. Probably this could be the reason that BRICS is not that extent successful what was we predicted when it was formed in 2009, particularly the China's economic strength in BRICS, right? China is the largest economy in BRICS group, and then which is actually trying to expand their economic hegemony in BRICS group, which other countries are not accepting it. In fact, many scholars are under the impression that in Russia and China has very good relation, but at the same time they also have their own differences on several issues, particularly China's economy role in BRICS. Russia never want China's supremacy in BRICS economy. Okay, Russia also never accept China's currency to be a major currency of BRICS countries, right? And Russia believes that if China is given a space where it could expand its role, it is a threat to their dominancy. Okay, and Russia never wanted as one third tier country under the China and US conflict that are happening now. It never accept that one. It actually aiming for biggest geopolitical global entity, and that is clear. If some other country could come and disturb it, obviously doesn't accept. Okay, China, so Russia also has its own view. It is not okay with everything that China does. Maybe the forest region, many China's companies are like coming in this Russia's forest region and creating problem for the local people. Of course, they had signed a treaty which actually reduced the conflict, but then still there are some rift. Okay, and likewise India and India's and Russia China's conflict, right? For example, in recent summit, China wanted to include several other countries, particularly Pakistan, Turkey, okay, some other countries as BRICS member. But India and other BRICS members, they did not accept it. Why? Because they should be consulted. There should be a peaceful discussion, prosperous discussion between all these countries, so that could include all the countries, maybe other countries, maybe Pakistan, maybe Turkey, or other countries, or Argentina, right? So that problem actually creating a lot of hindrances for the BRICS growth, right? And also another problem that this BRICS is in the form of China's aggressiveness when it is trying to put forward its foreign policy objective in BRICS group. So unless or until China benevolent towards all these country and reflect all the countries interest in China's policy, BRICS success is not expected. Means, so if unless and until China is benevolent towards this big country, the BRICS will not sustain. Just because China has humongous amount of financial resources doesn't mean that it can bully other members of BRICS and expand their relation. It's not like that. The BRICS should reflect all the countries' interest. Then only the future of the BRICS is actually successful. Otherwise, it's a big question.
Thank you very much for this. And the last question for today is India and the future support of BRICS, because we know that India is always portrayed as a one country, one big country, but each country has political scene, and there are always voices pro and against whatever foreign policy you have. So when we think about India in the horizon of, let's say, 5 years, how can you see the position of India in BRICS in that future? Is there a big support domestically from India's politicians and experts, scholars, and people to stay in BRICS and develop the BRICS? Or you also have some critical voices that we should also hear?
If you could explore the history of India towards BRICS group, fortunately, both the political alliances, see, UPA, Union Progressive Alliance, headed by INC, Indian National Congress, and NDA, National Progressive Alliance, headed by the present BJP. So both the political alliances giving equal importance. Right. So usually, what we expect that the previous government foreign policy may not accepted by the present government, but in Indian context, particularly towards BRICS, is something different. From 2009 to till 2014, like I said, how Dr. Manmohan Singh gave importance to the BRICS group in its in his foreign policy objectives and implementation. I had discussed about that one already. Likewise, even present Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, he also giving a lot of importance for the BRICS group. Why? Because you just see the activities that India does whenever the BRICS summit takes place. Of course, 2020 BRICS summit took place in virtual mode, but then there was a lot of activity that took place across India. Right? So, yes, there are some political parties and individuals, they believe that BRICS doesn't have enough resources to take a position on various global issues or global aspect within our country. But then, as a government, whichever government is coming to power, they are actually giving importance. But policies are different. In importance, there is not at all differences. Maybe the objectives are different. Like I said, when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister of India, it was actually economic bloc, trading bloc. But when Prime Minister Narendra Modi became Prime Minister of India in 2014, strategic importance, security importance, peacekeeping importance, terrorism importance, extremism importance. Okay, there is no compromise on significance of BRICS group in India's foreign policy. Probably the policy may be different, objectives may be different.
Thank you very much for this. I'm delighted that we could discuss BRICS today with Dr. Srinivas, and I can confidently say that he explained details about the BRICS and India in a very nice way. And thank you very much, Professor Srinivas, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to speak with you and to hear your explanations, your knowledge about India. So thank you very much again. I also want to say thank you to our viewers for watching us, and see you next time. Thank you very much.
It's my honor. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Hopefully, let's continue to collaborate on various talks of global issues and collaborate on other platforms. Thank you so much. It's my honor to be part of your lecture series. Thank you so much.
Thank you.